Stores nationwide. Sale now on.
Bí a lá an éanaig an seo Midwest Radio.
Agus fáilse bhid eislis go dtí ceola agus Alín, you're very welcome back. Tá sin sig Jim suas le cead an ómatí inis a dechach log. To geisteach le ceola agus Alín Midwest Radio. And we begin our tribute to one of the great troubadours from Castlebar. Spent some time in Galway and spent much of his life in Santa Fe, the late Gerry Carthy. Here's Gerry Carthy playing 5 or 6 different instruments, all recorded in his own home and all happening thanks to modern technology. Beginning with My Darling of Sleep, and afterwards I think it's Father O'Flynn and the Lilting Fisherman an tan batá i Diocon. Oh yes, the late Gerry Carthy there playing 3 or 4 different instruments all at the one time. Tracks superimposed on each other from the house recording. He did all his recordings in his house as well. Very, very gifted man. Agus Wolshe, Tree Pertany, all in Chinnaholm, my darling asleep. A father of Flynn and the lilting fisherman on Tanabatarigion, Gerry Inchin. Well, sadly, Gerry Carthy passed away a couple of weeks ago in Santa Fe. He'd been domiciled there for many, many years, and he also had grown up, of course, in Castlebar, and we'll be hearing from his dear friend John Hoban, another wonderful, ubiquitous troubadour from Castlebar in a while. But we'll just hear a little bit more from Gerry Carthy himself. This is from recording back in July of 2015 when he came into the studio here, and we had a wonderful conversation for a couple of hours, and he covered some great ground and some very, very interesting stuff. And here is how he began telling the tale of Main Street Castlebar and growing up in the pub there and coming to the music. Gerry Carthy, good jugga Gia and the Flash Show.
When we had the pub, my first introduction to live music would have been travelling musicians, and there was a banjo player called Snooky Elwood. He used to come into the pub, and he was a small little man, and he wore a white filthy gabardine, I think it was gabardine they called it in those days, and a cap, and he was a small little man, and he'd come in and he'd stand in the middle of the floor, he'd play the banjo with the thimble, and my mother would give him a glass of Guinness, and off he'd go to the next pub. So you can imagine what he was like by the time he got to the county home. After 16 pubs on the main, that's only the main street, that wasn't even Linden Hall Street. So, but I remember him, and that was magic. Funny how I ended up playing the banjo myself, you know, when I was living in Galway. When I got to know you, that was the instrument of choice, as they say these days.
How did you start off on the banjo, Gerry? We'll say, okay, we've gone through the whistle now and the fife, and we've got a few chords on the guitar. And sure, even if you're having to scale makeup when you're good at that.
No, this is true. We had a group. There was Sean Nolan on the guitar. They had a pub. Tommy Brett singing, and his mother taught the piano, and he's still playing the piano around, well, not that much anymore in Castlebar. And Bernie Hughes, Lord have mercy on him, who died a year ago, was singing as well. And we had this folk group, and we had the most imaginative name for a folk group you could even think of, the Town Folk. That was all we could come up with, the Town Folk. But the first gig we ever did was at the Brown Cow in Castlebar. I think we got something like 17 at 6, which would have been a lot of money in those days. But we were learning, and Father Shannon at the time, he helped us out, I think, a bit. He later went on to go to Ballinrobe. He was running the choir at the time. And so we used to practice every week, and we'd play at the Hops and then shut off the record player, and we'd nearly get murdered for playing, folk music in the middle of the rock and roll, but sure, we didn't care. We had to stand out in the middle of the floor. And so that was that folk group. So then I did leave it, and I went to England. I went to England with Enda Kenny's first cousin, John Joe Kenny. And Tony, Lord have mercy on him, who owned the pub in the main street, picked us up in Euston Station, and we went to London, and we got a job on a building site as for students. Then you didn't have to pay tax, and then we got transferred down to Cheltenham, working for Wimpy's. At the end of that job in about, it must be September 1969, and I worked for Wimpy's in Cheltenham. And that's when I really got into it. Then that's when I began to realise the depth and the strength of Irish music. Well, you'd have to go away to really know what you have, you see. So when I was in England, I became aware of the power of Irish music. You know what I mean? So at that time, I was into traditional music and also the folk scene. So my favourite bands would have been the Johnstons and Sweeney's Men. They would have been, and they were great fans of the masters like Willie Clancy and Seamus Ennis and all those guys. So it was really through them that I got introduced to real traditional music, you know, because there wasn't many traditional players in Castlebar at the time. There was a fellow called Martin Ruan. Did you ever meet him? Martin Ruan, the fiddle player. And but he didn't play out. There was no playing out in those days. You wouldn't hear them, you know what I mean? You wouldn't be exposed to the music. But then my father used to play the fiddle, but I never heard him playing. He was more interested in hurling. He was hurling mad, you know, being from Gart. And his sister learned to play the fiddle, and Desi Mulcair's father used to teach them, as far as I remember. They go from farm to farm and teach the fiddle. So that's where I like to think I got the music from, anyway, or the love of the music, you know.
Just an old rusty wagon that's left to rot away, one we used to ride in back in the good old days. Everyone loved their neighbours, everybody was so free. Riding in our brand new wagon was something to see. Oh, I can see my daddy riding up on the wagon seat. Mother in her new sunbonnet, she looks so nice and neat. Children all in the wagon, Grandma, Grandpa too. We used to go to church on Sunday when the wagon it was new. Red wheels on the wagon, everybody was so free. We were just as happy as riding in the limousine. People came together, came from the mountainside, took a look at our brand new wagon and all take a ride. Oh, I can see my daddy riding up on the wagon seat. Mother in a new sunbonnet, she looks so nice and neat. Children all in the wagon, Grandma, Grandpa too. We used to go to church on Sunday when the wagon it was new. Well, the automobile is here now, and the wagon days are through. Aeroplanes are humming, and the neighbours are so few. Everybody here is hurting, and it's money that gets you through. We didn't need much money when the wagon it was new. Oh, I can see my daddy riding up on the wagon seat. Mother in a new sunbonnet, she looks so nice and neat. Children all in the wagon, Grandma, Grandpa too. We used to go to church on Sunday when the wagon it was new. An old rusty wagon that's left to rot away, one we used to ride in back in the good old days. Everyone loved their neighbours, everybody was so free. Riding in our brand new wagon was something to see. Oh, I can see my daddy riding up on the wagon seat. Mother in her new sunbonnet, she looked so nice and neat. Children all in the wagon, Grandma, Grandpa too. We used to go to church on Sunday when the wagon it was new. We used to go to church on Sunday when the wagon it was new.
The great Gerry Carthy there, a wonderful troubadour, a multi-instrumentalist and a great raconteur and storyteller, and of course above all a wonderful friend and character. Good luck Gina Flachish. And several wonderful messages in, and I'll read them all a bit later on. If you wish to text or WhatsApp us, it's 087 900 4141. That's 087 900 4141. Text or WhatsApp in association with O'Reilly's Plates and Pours, New York, where an Irish welcome is always on the menu with Gerry. Well, Gerry Carthy had begun by telling me in that interview and that chat that we did in the singing session here in the very studio where I'm sitting now back in 2015. He talked about the early traveller who came into the pub and sang music in his very first gig. But he then went back in time a little bit and he talked about growing up in Castlebar and his father and mother and the school and the music agus chuile hort machine.
Well, I grew up on the main street, went to the National School, went to St. Gerald's. They wanted me to go to Gerald's, but I didn't want to do that. And I stood my ground. Actually, I didn't want to go because I joined the snooker club and I became a champion snooker player. And that was the main reason. I didn't want to leave the Catholic club, which is now the Linden Hall Arts Centre, upstairs, and I won the blowing my own trumpet here, but I won the snooker championship when I was 17, and I bet Jack O'Flannery, the local cattle jobber, who was a famous character on the billiard table, and that's probably the highlight of my life. But anyway, we had a pub there. And I was just thinking recently, you know, well, we're working it out with the brother. I think there were 16 pubs on the main street when we were growing up. And there's 3 left now. Or is it 2? 3 or 2. Amazing, different world. But anyway, my mother's from Claremorris and my dad's from Gort, just beside Peterswell, the next townland over, Clune. So that's where he's from. So I grew up in the pub till I was 16. And I went to school and we had a fife and drum band at Brother Augustus. And first of all, you learn to play the tin whistle, Brother Damien. And actually in the parish magazine this year, there's a picture of him. And I was thinking of putting it up on the website when I get around to it. They used to call him Birdie. That was his nickname. All the brothers in those days had nicknames. Everybody had a nickname. But anyway, his name was Birdie, or his nickname was Birdie, but a lovely, gentle, quiet kind of a man. And he taught us the tin whistle, you know, Fáinne Galilei, Dawn of the Day, and he'd point out the notes on the big pieces of cardboard. And I always remember this, on the back of the cardboard, it was Sweet Afton boxes or Players boxes. They were all joined together. They came from the factory before they've put the cigarettes in them. And it was before they were cut up. Did you ever see that? So that's what they did the music on. And so if you're good enough on the tin whistle, then they give you a fife. And we had a kilt. We had a gold kilt, a black jacket, green shawl, airman's little hat, and white and black socks, and tassels on the side of the socks. And my first memory of playing with that band was at the Flacchiol and Boyle in 1966. And if I remember rightly, Ballahadreen bet us, but they always won anyway for some reason. They were great. But so that was the beginning. That's what got me started in the music. And then the folksy, you know, I mean, the ballad boom, as they called it at the time, was going strong. So I was tipping around on the guitar, and I went up to the Gaeltacht in Falcarra in 1966 and 1967, and Sean Nolan had a guitar, and he showed me the first 2 chords, the theme tune of the Virginian, A minor to G. I had them driven mad by the time we got out of the bus, and in those days it took about 8 hours to get to Falcarra. So that was how I started.
Wonderful, and you were playing the Virginian, the theme to the Virginian.
Well, A minor and G. That's the first two chords I ever learned. Sean Allen showed me.
And you could have been Hurricane Higgins if you had continued on your
yeah, I could.
Your snooker.
In more ways than one.
Gerry Carthy there, a multi-instrumentalist again, playing so many various instruments, recorded in his home in Santa Fe some years back. And glorious to think that he learned that particular tune and the rhythms of it when doing a summer course in the Closh de Gaeilge down in Fáilcarrach in the Donegal Gaeltacht, saying it was an 8-hour journey on the bus to get there. And something very poignant and very beautiful, and that to think of him 30 or 35, maybe even 40 years later, recording that lovely tune and keeping the dance rhythm that he remembered from his summer holidays as a student in Fáilcarrach. Well, of course, John Hoban is another marvellous multi-instrumentalist and troubadour and raconteur, very much in the same cloth and cut as Gerry Carthy, and a great friend of Gerry's over the years. Met up with John, and he was delighted talk about his dear friend Gerry Carthy. And the Godogaji in the Flash, the Gerry Carthy, who passed away a couple of weeks ago. Agus Solas Shiri's Kjol Ho Instant Vlice. So John Hoban, when he called to see me in a Hamor to talk about his dear friend Gerry.
We're talking about Gerry Carthy and his life in Castlebar, and his life in Galway, his life in Ireland, and his life in America. And going back with Gerry, I know him since the 60s, I'd say. Certainly in the 70s we got to know each other well and have been friends from then to now. Thanks be to God. And he'd always refer to his start in music again, which I was talking about, and he'd refer to Brother Damien, or as he was affectionately known as Birdie. He used to teach us the tin whistle. He taught me as well the tin whistle. So Castlebar, that was the De La Salle boys band. Now I was put on the bass drum, which I resented marching around Michael Park beating it, as Galway were beating Mayo in 3 in a row. But I was on the bass drum because I could carry it. And but Gerry was the tin whistle was his thing, and also another musical influence on his was this. I was going to say mythical character, but he was a real man called Snooky Elwood, who was a street musician, banjo player in Castlebar, and this was the banjo which Gerry was known as a banjo player. So Snooky, and then in Castlebar when Gerry was growing up, as when I was growing up, there was the Broswelch band. But there was the remnants then of Stephen Garvey, who I knew as a young fella, used to come to our house, and he'd play for the children and play for the parents on the road on a Sunday in a white tuxedo, and he'd be playing the organ, the church organ he donated in Castlebar. Stephen, he left in 58 to Texas, went to live with his sister. But I remember up to 4 years of age Stephen Garvey's music, and Gerry would have too. And also there was a very important a choir in Castlebar, which consisted of the men, all young men. The choir in Castlebar was, first of all, it was a Father Scahill, was before my time. Then there was Father Gabriel Charles from Dunmore, and then Father Tom Shannon. And the choir was powerful, a 4-part choir. And I think Gerry was in it. We were all in the choir. I'm not sure if Gerry sang in the choir or not, but I think he was. But these were the influences, and Stephen Garvey's music went back to the 50s, Schubert and Lilac Time, and Gilbert and Sullivan, and there was music societies in Castlebar where people sang, and that was very important to him. Now his father was also an exile from South Galway, and he was a hurling man. And Paul Carthy played hurling, which was very unusual. And Gerry always had this dual citizenship to this thing with Galway, that he kind of felt a real closeness to South Galway, Joe Cooley country, Gort and Gort hurling, but particularly I think over Behella Kayla, over Tubber, over that side where there was real hurlers. And so he was a snooker player. Gerry was a snooker player also, which was another unusual thing, but he was a top-class snooker player in St. Gerald's Social Club. And I used to be watching this like with Gerry. I said, God, who taught you how to play snooker? It was very like the banjo, I thought, He had great friends. There was wonderful friends that Gerry had. Castlebar lads, Paul Heverin and Ber Brady. Some have passed on now. John Joe Kenny, Pete Toohey in London. We were in London together. Ringo Reynolds, Tomas Brett. Gerry was a very loyal friend, I felt. He was to me also, even though I was a younger generation. Maybe 2 years was a lot in those days, like did. And then he went for the summer, like people did, over to London, and he hit the emigrant world. But he went to a different place to London. He went to Cheltenham, where the horses were. But there he kind of got in touch with music, and this would be his path, like where there was a great folk club, a very famous folk club in Cheltenham, and the folk music, just like Greenwich Village, or the revival of English folk music as they called it, like with the Watersons and Martin Carthy and that Richard Thompson, the Fairport Convention. Gerry was very taken by that, and within that, then he heard the Johnsons. And one of his great friends and great inspirations was in that Mick Maloney. And also Sweeney's Men, of course, which he came across later in Galway, were big in the folk clubs at the time, And the folk clubs in England were a particular they were a wonder. I got the tail end of the folk club scene in London too, which was very interesting. The Troubadour and people like Paul Simon and that used to come and sing in them. Dylan sung in it and so on. And they were mainly singing local or English folk songs, and then you'd have the odd Irish musician which would play it as well. So back in Castlebar then, there was a thing happened in Castlebar which Gerry was very influenced by, and friendship. But musically, he met with Brendan Fahey. And Brendan was a couple of years younger. Dermot Fahey's son there from Edison Street. Dermot had a radio shop, and he was a bit of a genius. The father, he was a genius at electronics, and the first record player we had was bought off Dermot Fahey. And Gerry met up with Brendan, who had been in a group. They were like the Castlebar Beatles. They were called La Salle, and they won the Castlebar Song Contest in sort of 1968 or something like that. There was 4 lads in it: John Dunford, Brendan Fahey, Shay Kavanagh, or no, not Brendan Dunn, John Dunford, John Donegan, Fintan Murphy, and Mary Hevern, and Brendan Fahey. And Brendan was what would have been kind of classed as a bit of a genius. He was a guitar player, but he was very different. He was like a hippie, and he could really play like. He heard Rory Gallagher playing like Pistol Slapper Blues or something like that by Blind Boy Fuller, and Brendan would have it off. All the Leaves Are Brown, California Dreamin', and he was a very good singer too. But that came from La Salle. And John Dunford, of course, was a member of La Salle too, and the Dunford family, who Stevie was also a great bodhrán player, and so on. Gerry then had also teachers which were very important in Castlebar that supported the music and were very central to a folk club that they started in Castlebar. Christy Tynan and Ken Lyons. And there was Frank Gleeson, who was a friend of Mary Bergen's. Frank was from Dublin. I think he's in Minneapolis or out that way now. And they not Frank now, but the other boys had a kind of a humour and a way of teaching, like be it maths or be it like language or music, and had a way of teaching. And they had a teacher that preceded them I didn't have him because I didn't go to St. Charles, a man called the Bull Nelly. And he taught a lot of this. And I think he might have taught Gerry too, but he was extremely important teacher in Castlebar, because these men knew traditional music, and they sort of pointed us all towards traditional music and helped promote it, really, without promotion being a thing. And then, of course, Gerry went on to Galway to do, as Peter Galligan called it, the high dip.
Well, Martin said to his man, "Fie, man, fie." Martin said to his man, "Who's the fool now?" Martin said to his man, "You have a cup and I the can. Thou art well drunken, man. Who's the fool now?" "I saw a man in the moon. Fie, man, fie." "Saw a man in the moon. Who's the fool now?" "I saw a man in the moon shouting out a fiddler's tune. Thou art well drunken, man. Who's the fool now?" "I saw the mouse chase the cat. Fie, man, fie." "I saw the mouse chase the cat. Who's the fool now?" "I saw the mouse chase the cat, and the cheese it eat the rat. Thou art well drunken, man. Who's the fool now?" Well, Martin said to his man, "Fie, man, fie." Martin said to his man, "Who's the fool now?" Martin said to his man, "You have the cup, I the can. Thou art well drunken, man. Who's the fool now?" And I saw the hare
chased the hound, fie, man, fie. Saw the hare chase the hound, who's the fool now? I saw the hare chase the hound, 40 miles above the ground. Thou art well drunken, man, who's the fool now? Martin said to his man, fie, man, fie. Martin said to his man, who's the fool now? Martin said to his man, you have the cup, I the can. Thou art well drunken, man, who's the fool now? That'd definitely be from the era of the folk clubs and the Black family, Mary and Francis and Michael, Martin, Shay in particular, would have brought that song. That would have been a very popular song in the 60s, late 60s, 70s in Galway. Mickey Finn used to sing it, and people used Terry Smith, Dickler Fitz, and that's where I learned it and played it many times with Gerry. Martin says to his man, and that's on singing it, harmony on it, on the first General Humbert album, which was a great band from Castlebar that came out in the early 70s. Galway, as I mentioned the name Peter Galligan. Peter Galligan was a son of Dr. Brian Galligan, who was one of the founders of Colchis Kiltrearan from Kilnalek and County Cavan. You know him. Peter played the banjo, and he studied to be a doctor, but then he switched over to acupuncture and stuff. And he was a great friend of Gerry. Great friend, and brothers Bernard, another brother Bernard, Seamus. There was a load of brothers. Their mother came from Drummond, and she was Baines. She was related to the Baines, Tomas Baines, and the great musicians, the Baineses in Drummond. But Dr. Galligan and his son, the sons went down to Galway, and in fact, when they went to Galway, and this was prior to Gerry, or just around the time the film happened in Galway, what they called the film came to Galway, Alfred the Great. So Alfred the Great attracted people, and they all got parts in it as extras in it. And I think Gerry might have had to grow long beards in here in the 60s. So you see that in Galway, in the cellar, and they all had plenty of money then. Plenty of money. So they started playing music, and he met up with people like Jimmy Dillon from Connemara and Sean Tyrrell, of course, Eugene Lamb, and Gerry's main influence, inspiration and friend was Mickey Finn, whose father was from Roscommon. I think Mickey might have been born in Castlecomer, but he certainly lived and got his music tuition in Ballinrobe of the brother. I forget the brother's name now in Ballinrobe. Mickey was an absolute wonderful, wonderful musician. I was fortunate to know him. He died in 1987, a young man. So we all played. I went there. Gerry played in Galway, and it was another world. It was a world that was like very close to the Beat generation, or the 60s, like America. There was all the change going on and that was happening in the world politically, and students and Galway. And Galway was full of people who were just found themselves there. There was people who were going to college, doing what they should be doing, and then there was people who were doing nothing else except playing music in Mrs. Cullen's all day and learning music from each other. And they would also have the influence then of Connemara, the Shannos singers like Sean O'Connor would come in from Connemara, or maybe Darabon, or Johnny Warchie Larry. They'd also have Eddie Maloney. They'd have East Galway music, and they'd have Cooley coming in. And Mickey, I remember playing with Mickey Finn and Joe Cooley once in the Trappers Inn. But Gerry was influenced and took all this in and devoted himself. He got his H-Dip, his diploma in teaching, and he was very happy to do that, but he was totally dedicated to playing the banjo, and he played the banjo, but he also played the whistle very well, and instruments later on as well. So that was it. And Gerry had a major change in his life then in 87, when he got free, or in 84 I think it was, he got free from the demon, as he called it, the demon alcohol, and he lived without it then for the rest of his days. And that was a wonderful thing for him, and it was so important in his life. It was everything in his life. He moved in 1987 then to America. I used to be called in Dublin by Wally Page, the great Wally Page. When I'd come into the Ansley house to play with himself and John Mulhern, you'd hear, "Here's your man from Mayo, your man." I felt very honoured to be called the man from Mayo. So Gerry is the man from Mayo in this song, on the trip to Santa Fe. I'm a rambling man from the county Mayo. When spring comes around, I'm ready to go wherever my spirit longs to be. The road is my friend, it takes care of me. With my fiddle and banjo, I've covered some ground, from Belfast to Boston and Deer Achill Sound, Okemo, Oklahoma and Santa Fe, and the place I call home is round the shores of Clew Bay. It was great to arrive in New Mexico, to be met off the bus by a man from Mayo. We played music for cowboys and the Indians too. We saddled a pony for the Navajo and the Sioux. With my fiddle and banjo, I've covered some ground, from Belfast to Boston and Deer Achill Sound, Okemo, Oklahoma and Santa Fe, and the place I call home is round the shores of Clew Bay. While I'm still young at heart, I'll ramble, I'd say, playing the music for an honest day's pay. When God calls me ashore, I'll be ready to go, far from those blue hills of the County Mayo. With my fiddle and banjo, I've covered some ground, from Belfast to Boston, Deer Achill Sound, Okemo, Oklahoma and Santa Fe, and the place I call home is round the shores of Clew Bay. America in '87. Then he went and he stopped in New York for a while. I think Mick Maloney might have been involved there, but he was later in Gerry's life, certainly. But Gerry stayed and was befriended a friend called Jane Kelton, and Jane plays the flute as well, and she's still there, Second Avenue, and a great friend. And he made friends wherever he went. Playing music, just playing music. I forgot to mention himself. Brendan also travelled and spent times in Heidelberg in Germany, Busken, which was again totally different. This was completely different than anybody else, except this tribe that were there, these kind of people that travelled, and it was kind of like travelling musicians. Really, it was a great tradition in itself. So in New York, Gerry was very, very influenced by Jack Kerouac and the beat writers and Allen Ginsberg and all that generation of, people that wrote about it. And their medium, their music was jazz, but this was the Irish music. And as I mentioned, Sean Terrell earlier, Sean was in Boston and playing there and so on, and Irish musicians. But it mainly took him on the road, and the road led to Santa Fe. And there was also a thing in Gerry, a big thing from a long way back with cowboys and Indians. He just loved the cowboys and Indians, the Navajo and the Sioux. That I went out and visited them in Santa Fe. We played for the Navajos, so we played Saddle the Pony for them and everything. We had great time in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, New Mexico, all around there. And he married. I went to a Pat Broderick, the great piper from East Galway, from the Brodericks, Bullon, and. So I went out to Pat and Anne-Marie. I went on the bus. They flew, and I went on the Greyhound bus to visit Gerry Carthy in Santa Fe. It was beautiful. And then Gerry married Laura, and I met Laura, and they had a beautiful son called Mikey, and that was the centre of Gerry's life then. Gerry and Laura went their ways, and amicably, but Mikey was loved and Gerry by both, and Gerry looked after Mikey then and lived his life up until a couple of years ago when Mikey passed away. He had cerebral palsy. I think it was cerebral palsy. And a pure, gifted person was Mikey, and Gerry lived for him, and so on. So that's the story. Just one other mention of people that came his way were people like Cormac Gannon, who may be listening to hear this sometime. He, and Vincey Keehan from, again, Beha, down that side of Galway, in San Francisco. Gerry went, and they were very, very, very good friends. And he had many, many good friends, and I would include myself as being one of them and be grateful for it. And so when he passed away, we just play his music and see that he's in the next room with Mikey, with his son Mikey, and we think of him in Castlebar, Beha, Galway, San Francisco, and all these other places that he visited and sung and played tunes like O Carlos Contralto and various other pieces of music that we learned, Breton tunes and Hang Your Head Tom Dooley. He used to sing that, and the Banshee Peeler went out one night on duty on patrol and all. So thanks, Gerry. Gajetu Slán. A song called The White Feather, which is written from San Francisco, looking out on the beautiful bay after visiting it and realising that we were free. Being free in San Francisco. And Gerry loves San Francisco, and I love it too, and I'd love to dedicate it to the people that are there, that we know. And it's the opposite of what we learned in school, really, I suppose. Don't show the white feather wherever you go. Well, this is saying, make sure you show the white feather wherever you go. Just turn it out, turn the inside out. So it's called The White Feather. I've seen lots of men and some women as I ramble from shore to shore. I've friends in all sorts of states of mind who allow me stop on the floor. I'm now in the 40th year of singing and dancing my way. Please God, I live till I'm 80. I'll have twice as much to say. I keep seeing new people and places. I'm in California today, singing in San Francisco, looking out on its beautiful bay. I feel so blessed in this lifetime to be given a chance to forgive myself for being such a pagan and not having a clue how to live. So thanks to Seamus and Deirdre, to Vincey, the Doc, Honest Jim, Cormac, Maven, Sean Galvin, Joe Cooley, Mick and Bill Finn, to Blow, my friend from the heartland, your kindness I ne'er will forget. Your gifts are in every song I sing as I head down to the sunset. From Glasson to Tubber, New York to Seattle, Lansing, Wisconsin and Ontario, from Healdsburg to Lewisburg, Cleveland to Akron, our brothers and sisters in old Idaho. So boys, get together, don't mention the weather, leave the turf and the hay to the neighbours at home. Heal one another, let go of your mother, and be glad that you come from the County Leitrim. This is a tune I learned from Gerry, and I don't know the name of it, but I do call it Gerry Carthy's. And I'll go into a second one then that's a Breton tune that he brought back from Brittany. And I remember him teaching it to me, giving it to me, which was a way that we got tunes off each other. He'd sit and play the tin whistle or play the banjo, and I'd sit across from him. And that's how I learned a lot of music. And we learned a lot of music like that off each other, which was a great thing. song called The New Cotton Dress, and I used to sing it. Gerry used to ask me to sing the song. There's always a thing when people ask you to sing a particular song, and this was written, I wrote this in Australia in 1988 or 91, I'd say. And true story, but the banjo thing and the fiddle thing in it again are there, and the rambling and the meeting up with people. The air is I'm not sure the air is New Cottoners. They both got to town in the springtime. They were friends in a musical way, hailed from two different backgrounds, as different as night is from day. He played an old German fiddle and a banjo that looked like a goat. She sung softly and played the piano, and she came from a family of note. Her star was declining as each day went by. She'd a habit no money could feed. He stayed by her side in the tears that she cried. Saw himself in her great hour of need. She went lower and lower in her spirit. Her body and mind were a mess. He told her of his own stormy journey and gave her a new cotton dress. She turned her will and her life to a power that was greater than she'd ever be. She got dried out, helped out with great love and care. One day she could finally see her star was declining as each day went by. She'd a habit no money could feed. He stayed by her side in the tear she cried. Saw himself in his great hour of need. She's married in the north of the country, with a life beyond her wildest dreams. He's rambling in some place or other, the same 3 and 4pence it seems. In their hearts they're still walking together down a highway that never ends, singing songs for free and each other, with lots of brave musical friends. Her star was declining as each day went by. She'd a habit no money could feed. He stayed by her side in the tear that she cried. Saw himself in his great hour of need. Her star was declining as each day went by. She'd a habit no money could feed. He stayed by her side in the tears that she cried. Saw himself in his great hour of need. Of Castlebar at the end came in. I don't know where it came in from there. General Lambert was hovering.
John Hoban there from the house recording I did with him during the week, and my thanks to him for that wonderful tribute to Gerry Carthy. We've a bit more to hear from Gerry Carthy himself in this tribute, and we'll be taking that after the break, and with lots of marvellous messages in, and we'll be reading some of those out. One of the most that strikes me here is Joe, it is more than brilliant. That's absolutely stunning, Gurmida Mohigat.
The time is 11 o'clock.
Midwest Radio's top of the hour with Fadden's for Men, Brafey Road, Castlebar, where fashion never sleeps. Stockist of Sixth Sense, Columbia, Farah, Superdry and Rivet and Denim. Faddens.ie.
2 little chicken breast products have been recalled after salmonella was detected in some batches, and chicken products from Manor Farm and Western Brand have also been recalled. The products have used by dates of April 12th and 13th, but the Food Safety Authority is advising consumers to check their freezers in case they were frozen. It's got the full list of products on its website. An Irish man in his 40s has died on the Spanish island of Ibiza after falling from a cliff in the north of the island. It happened on Monday afternoon, with medical first responders pronouncing him dead at the scene. The Department of Foreign Affairs says it's aware of the incident and standing by to provide consular assistance. Political pressures mounting on the government as a 24-hour national ambulance strike continues tonight. Around 2,000 National Ambulance Service staff, including paramedics and emergency medical technicians, are taking part until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Emergency calls are still being answered, but delays are expected for non-life-threatening cases. Further strike action is planned later this month if the dispute isn't resolved, but Taoiseach Micheál Martin has hit back at criticism, saying a previous proposal backed by unions was rejected by its members.
Now, union leadership recommended this proposal to their members. So how can you use language like refuse to resolve?
2 people have been arrested following a major drug seizure at Shannon Airport. Revenue officers discovered approximately 31 kilos of herbal cannabis worth €620,000. A man in his 30s and a woman in her 40s were detained and charged in relation to the investigation, and they'll appear before Ennis District Court tomorrow. An investigation is underway after 2 cars were set on fire in a housing estate in Galway last weekend. Carthy responded to the blaze and to reports of shots being fired at a house in Athenry. No one was injured and witnesses are asked to come forward. Businesses in Waterford City are still coming to terms with the impact of Saturday night's fire, which damaged up to 40 local businesses. They had a meeting this afternoon with Ministers Peter Burke and John Cummins, as well as the local authority. Dressmaker Niamh Nidali says she's devastated after spending the last 12 years building up her business.
It's just such a blow to the community, because irregardless of what anyone thinks, there's people up there that brought joy to children. You have painters, you have people who've lost absolutely everything. Like, there's no coming back. I'm never going to start this again. Financially, this has crippled me.
Donald Trump says stopping Iran from developing a nuclear weapon is more important than America's finances. A fragile ceasefire continues between the 2 countries, but substantial peace talks remain out of reach. The UK's announced it'll contribute drones, jets and a warship to a multinational mission to secure the Strait of Hormuz. The US president was asked about how the war is impacting everyday Americans.
The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about America's financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all.
The British Prime Minister is going to meet one of his biggest potential rivals tomorrow as he prepares to face down a backbench rebellion against his leadership. Health Secretary Wes Streeting will speak to Keir Starmer before the King's speech setting out the government's parliamentary plans. The Labour Party has collapsed into open warfare about the PM's future, with 4 junior ministers stepping down and demanding he do the same. And Israel's made it through to the Eurovision Grand Final despite receiving a mixed reception at tonight's semi-final. Protesters can be heard chanting "Stop the Genocide" before Noam Betan began his performance of the song Michelle. A number of countries, including Ireland, are protesting the event due to Israel's participation. And that's your latest news update at 11:04.
And in sport, Southampton have kept alive their hopes of an immediate return to the Premier League with a 2-1 extra-time victory over Middlesbrough. Shade Charles scored the winning goal in the 116th minute at St Mary's. The tie was marred by claims of spying by Southampton on a Borough training session, with an investigation now opened by the EFL. St Mirren will have to play a Scottish Premiership relegation playoff despite winning 2-0 against Aberdeen tonight. They'll finish second from bottom of the table, with Kilmarnock guaranteeing their top-flight status in Scotland with a 3-1 win at home to Dundee. Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola expects a tough test against Crystal Palace despite their upcoming Conference League final. City can move to within 2 points of Arsenal with victory as the Premier League title race heads into the final weeks, but Guardiola says his side must focus only on their own performances and not results elsewhere.
We played here against Aston Villa in the past, West Ham, nothing to play, and it was how difficult it was, so I'm pretty sure they will do the best, knowing that of course they have the final 3 days later.
The London Mayor Sadiq Khan says taxpayers there could face a £2.5 million hit if West Ham are relegated from the Premier League. The Hammers sit in the bottom three with 2 games remaining, while fellow London club Tottenham are also battling to avoid the drop. Khan blamed former Mayor Boris Johnson for what he called the worst deal imaginable over West Ham's tenancy at the London Stadium. The Mayor says Londoners should be cheering on West Ham to stay up in order to protect taxpayers from further issues. Rory McIlroy has cut his practice round short at golf's PGA Championship tonight due to foot issues. The Masters champion was limping on the course in Philadelphia as he continues to recover from a blister on his toe. McIlroy will have Jordan Spieth and John Ram for company for the first 2 days of the major. Padraig Harrington, Shane Lowry and Tom McKibben are also part of the field. And Kildare and Meath have qualified for the Leinster minor football final. Jack Doran's goal helped Kildare to edge out Louth by 111 to 10 points, while Meath were 6-point winners against Dublin in the other semi-final. And that's your news and sport. I'm Will O'Callaghan. It's now 6 minutes past the hour.
Midwest Radio Weather, brought to you by Archers for Colour Trend Irish manufactured paints. Archers of Ballina for all your paint and decorating needs. 096 350 10.
Agus níis an siirigh sé nómaltaí agus tríocha second inis híineag a chlog san luiche. Tonight start off mainly dry with clear spells. Showers will extend southwards overnight. And lowest temperature tonight of 5 to 8 degrees with moderate to fresh westerly winds. Agus moidach, Cédín on Triolá Déag Divina Bealtaine. Wednesday, cool, breezy day with sunshine and showers. Highest temperature of 10 to 13 degrees with fresh, gusty northwesterly winds. And Sian Amshire, the Lord Gerry Nocht. And as we always say, with the last weather forecast, má tá tú taistil na Boise, bí cuairmach na Bally, mar tá cuideas na Boise dorachaí agus sleán an áiteachí, agus well má tá tú sa leabí nó cus tinny. Súlam sa gúilta go jazz che, cholaí compordach agus smidgin beag colatach beaches.
Midwest Radio Weather Forecast with thanks to Archers, #1 in the Northwest for farm feeds and agri-supplies. Archers of Ballina and Castlebar for all your farm needs.
Tá tú géisteach le Midwest Radio, á chréile 96.1 FM.
Fáilsú bheith leis go dtí ceolalas ealaíonn tas nis nuí nómaltaí agus chuigean 9 second go ddíireach inis a híine gur chlág san luiche. Tú a géisteach an sin le Gerry Carthy ar a bheith óg Stein. Gerry Carthy, the late Gerry Carthy, playing the Clark's whistle there. Beautiful paired and cut back version. Lovely, sincere music. The Come West Along the Road was one of his great themes, of course. And he was playing it on the C10 whistle there, the Clark one, which he had learned at the very beginning in Castlebar, along with the fife and drum band in St. Gerald's. And Gerry Carthy was remarkable in that he could play a beautiful, complex and delicious guitar accompaniment then side by side with that pared back and honed version. So sin éis céal fear íomtach a bhíán ceoltar fíor chumasach agus fíor spéisiúil and an absolute extraordinary and wonderful human being Gerry Carthy. Well, Gerry Carthy, of course, was in studio in 2015 and he spent almost 2 hours here in studio talking about his music and singing stuff and playing tunes and everything live on the air. And here is one of the very interesting stories that he told me about one of the songs of Gerry's that was very, very popular. In fact, I remember distinctly, it was Jimmy Murphy, the great fiddle player from outside Swinford. And Jimmy phoned in and asked would Gerry Carthy sing the Drum Layman song. Jimmy Murphy had a great love for Gerry Carthy, his wonderful, clear and resonant style of singing. And this is the response that Gerry Carthy made on the radio on that night. If you wish to text us, we've loads of lovely messages in, but if you'd like to join or text us, text or WhatsApp us 087 900 4141. And we'll be glad to read out your messages. Thanks to the Marion Row Hotel and Public House, New York, located just off Times Square and home to the finest hospitality in the Big Apple Adjunction. Rashish Guji Gerry Carthy. The song is the one, Gerry, that's very, very popular, and it's a lovely song. And you just might give a small intro to it if you don't mind.
Story of this: there's a program on the radio in America, you might have heard of it, called the Thistle and Shamrock. And they do a lot of folk music, Scottish, Irish, traditional music. And I was listening to it once and in the radio, and they had a tune. I think it was a Scottish tune, not the Sky Wedding song. What's that other island out there in Scotland? I can't think of it now. And I thought, yeah, that's a nice tune. So I went and I bought the CD to learn the tune, right? Now, I have a young fella, he's muscular dystrophy, he's handicapped, he's 13. So I have to sleep with him at night to turn him over in the middle of the night. So I put on the music for him. And so we were listening to this CD over and over and over again. And this song got stuck in my head, and that's how I learnt it. But I read on the back of the record that it was written by a fella called Willie Mitchell, who apparently is a traditional folk singer and songwriter in Kintyre, in the Mulla Kintyre, whatever you call that, in Scotland. And then this band Usheen, I don't know if they wrote the tune to it, but he certainly wrote the words. So that's where that came from, and I just liked the sentiment of it, because it reminds me of the old days and you and Father Flatley and all that, and then going to Galway and the whole thing, that's what I like about it, and probably that's why people like it as well. So if I can remember what key it's in, that would help as well.
And Gerry Carthy, of course, wonderful fun as well, and off the cuff there. And he sang so well live in a very, very warm studio that night. And Jimmy Murphy from Meadig, the great fiddle player, sent in another message immediately afterwards to say that the song was brilliant and the singing was brilliant. And the accompanying story about Gerry's son, Mikey, who had muscular dystrophy and was cared for so much by Gerry. And this was one of his theme songs, really capped and crowned the story with the words that Jimmy Murphy used in his message.
Oh, the springtime has come to the land again. And the lark sweetly sings o'er the green fertile plain. and I'll take the road that is sweetest to me, the road to Drumlaban that winds to the sea. Well, I've met many friends there on every green mile, and the folks always greet me with a wave and a smile. If I spend all my days there, it's happy I'll be on the road to Drumlaban that winds to the sea. While we sat by the fireside when winter winds blew, and we laughed and we sang till the night was well through, and we'd have a good dram and a wee cup of tea for the road to Drumlaban that winds to the sea. On the long summer days when we tramped the hills o'er to spend hours at Enan's or Craigan's wild shore, well, the soft summer twilight made shadows to flee on the road to Drumlaban that winds to the sea. Now these days passing swiftly bring changes, I know, and as time passes on from this place we must go, but I'll always remember as the heart beats in me the road to Drumlaban that winds to the sea. Oh, the springtime has come to the Lagan again, and the lark sweetly sings o'er the green fertile plain, and I'll take the road that is sweetest to me, the road to Drumlaban that winds to the sea, the road to Drumlaban that winds to the sea.
Gerry Carthy recorded live in the studio here where I'm sitting back in 2015 when we had a 2-hour marvellous session on the radio. Godogagina Flachashko, that beautiful song there, The Road to Drumlaban, one of the many marvellous, unusual range of songs and stories and recitations and music and tunes that Gerry Carthy had, that he had picked up, of course, being a universal and much travelled, world-travelled troubadour. And that lovely song had all those qualities of poetry and lyricism and beautiful sentimentality, but also marvellous warmth and all kinds of dimensions within it. Gohal and Arfad. Well, Gerry Carthy also had a very wide fond of stories and recitations. This is one particular recitation that we all always enjoyed. He had picked it up, I think, in when he was down in Ennis at one stage. He was living down there for a while, and it's an interesting one. He often referred to it like the road he took himself. He said the road downhill. And it's also known as the tale of the Corrigan brothers. And here we hear the marvellous speaking voice again, this time, of the late Gerry Carthy. And some glorious messages in. And if you wish to send us more, text us or WhatsApp us, the number is 087 900 4141. That's 087 900 4141, text or WhatsApp, in association with Megan's Bar and Kitchen, nestled in the heart of Manhattan. Food agus crack, 7 days a week in New York City.
Ah, my throat is hot from a trail I've shorn today. My old flannels are soaked in sweat. I think I'll sit in the shade for a while and I'll wait till the old sun has set. I know of a little camping place, it's by the river below the town. I think I'll take my pack out there and I'll wait till the sun goes down. I have a little pride though of former days, but now there's no cause for pride. For it's 15 long years, almost to this day, since the old man Corrigan died. Jack Corrigan, that was the old man's name. He was one of the rare old stock. He held the reins, he trusted in God, yet he hated the drink and the smoke. We were just two country boys. We were never left out of the farm. We were always kept and checked under the power of the old man's arm. Breeding horses was a hobby of his. 'Twas just an old harmless craze. You'd oft times wish he was a little less hard way back in those childhood days. We were good though in the saddle as youngsters, for the old man kept a stud. He loved the old horses for the horses' sake, and the racing that ran in our blood. But the old man fell in the yard one day where we had some yearlings penned. We picked him up, we carried him in, we saw it was the end. The people, of course, they came from miles around. He didn't have a single foe. And the crowd that gathered around Jack's grave that day, they spoke well of the man below. Our only sister had died at birth, her mother long since dead. We knew then we were the only heirs, as the old man's will was read. Well, we fell in then with a drinking crowd, and we started to go the pace, and we forgot the sound of the old man's voice and the look on his honest face. Of course, we had plenty of friends as long as we had money to spend, but the road downhill was an easy road, and that was the road we went. Well, we backed then on a chestnut colt. We knew by the trail she showed, but didn't somebody get to the boy on her back? We knew by the way he rode. Well, we backed her again, 'twas in the Greystones Cup. She finished in half the straight. Our money it was in the bookie's bag. She had failed to carry the weight. Our money it was in the bookie's bag, but we didn't cause any fuss. It seems the men we had met at the races that day, they were a little bit more clever than us. Well, we sat and drank. It was in Mulligan's bar, and we gambled the whole night long. We dealt in horses, cattle and sheep, but all our deals went wrong. But as long as the banks would cash our few checks, we never cared a damn what we spent, for the road downhill was an easy road, and that was the road that we went. Well, 'twas after a year then that the drought set in, and it lasted more than a year. Our drains got blocked. Our stock died off, we saw it was the end. Our credit stopped, the bank door closed, our father's land we sold. We knew then we had squandered every penny we had, like the prodigal son of old. Well, 'twas 5 years after the old man's death, together we got our old pack. I tramped it into the nearest town, I said I'd have a drink with Jack. But he shook me hand and he wished me well. He was almost close to tears. I haven't seen Jack since then, nor have I heard of that man in years. He may be out in the great wild west, that thundering soul might be, toiling under a burning sun, cursing himself and me. But I'd give 10 years of this wasted life, but I know I won't live that long, for one good look at Jack's old face and a grip of his fingers strong. But that is the tale of the Corrigan brothers, and my story is now at an end. For the road downhill is an easy road, and it winds in a swishful bend. We were two of a dog rough, reckless pair, and that was one of the roads that we went.
The late Gerry Carthy there, wonderful speaking voice and great delivery there, and always had this fond of recitations, stories, anecdotes, and of course endless selections of tunes from various countries he had been in, and various instruments that he could take up and play at will. And that again from a house recording he did himself in the garage of his home in Santa Fe, where he lived for many, many years. Well, there are loads of messages in, and I think it's time to read out some of the lovely messages that have come in memory of Gerry Carthy. I listened, I've looked over as many of them as I could. First one here says, listening to your programme, Joe, thanks for the tribute. Gerry Carthy was a dear friend of so many, including myself, Michael Corcoran. I always asked my brother Damien or brother Augustus to play the tune so the other boys could get the gist of the tune. I could play the tunes by ear. He had not a note in my head. Say hello to John Hoban from me. Not many of us musicians left. And that's a lovely message there from Michael Corcoran. Michael got a meal Magat. And this from Brendan O'Brien, really enjoying the Gerry Carthy tribute. Could you give a mention to his sister Mary and his brother Paul Carthy, who are still in Santa Fe? From Brendan in Dublin. Brendan O'Brien, thank you very much. And a big hello indeed to Mary and to Paul Carthy. Hall in Shinny, Santa Fe. Agus godogad díal flash da yahoid Gerry Carthy. Can Eileen Shaw, really enjoying the Gerry Carthy tribute. Tá sé go hiamtach ar fada, Joe. Thank you very much, listener. Good night, Joe. A great night for the Rossies from Liam, the Rossi in Ballyhonus, and also enjoying the tribute very, very much to Gerry Carthy there. Didn't know him, but what a wonderful troubadour. Absolutely. Diego Joe o Hunda and Chawain, Donal and Gerry Brady, hearing their old friend Gerry Carthy and also their friend John Hoban. Fond memories. Donal Brady visited Gerry Carthy in Santa Fe a few years ago. May he rest in peace. And this comes from Hilda Brady. Hilda, the wonderful fiddle player from down in Coil Inachten beside Foxford. Her daughter, indeed, a marvellous fiddle player living now in Scotland and composing such wonderful music. Hilda, got a mille maiget for that. Enjoying listening to your show and remembering Gerry Carthy. We had the pleasure of meeting Gerry Gerrans on Farshaw in Santa Fe a couple of years ago and had a great night at one of his gigs. Gerry Carthy and his son Mikey. Very, very best wishes to John Hoban, Gerry's great friend from Henry and Mary Lally of Braintree in Massachusetts. Thank you so much for tuning our way from Massachusetts and Henry and Mary for that lovely message. Joe, a great programme as ever. Listening to yourself and John Hoban pay tribute to fellow Castlebar troubadour Gerry Carthy. Here is Gerry with Brendan Fahey from Shawnee Leiden in Leitrim, and sends me a link with that message there. Shawnee Leiden, thank you very, very much for that, and I'll try and get that downloaded when I get a chance. Got a mille mai. The lovely one was Gaelgi here, says Joe go hall in her father John Hoban nach Chleistal an éir nach Iamtach agus nach Comasach agus nach Ildánach an Fare. He is indeed, John Hoban, a wonderful character and multi-talented. Another lovely one here from Mary Greeny, and Mary says a lovely tribute and a piece of nostalgia, although at another level so sad. To Mushan Chara, Gunena Gia Trokra Ed, Maishiv Mary Greeny. Mary got a million market. And our old friend Kathleen Goggins in Ball says, Joe, a very, very interesting and a very, very moving show. Got a million market. Another one here says, fabulous programme, Joe. Local radio Midwest is absolutely amazing. And I'm learning so much locally about our rich musical heritage since I started to tune in more regularly, and all about the music and the tunes. It's so inspiring and so relaxing. Thank you very much. And that comes from Liam, who was really enjoying the tribute to Gerry Carthy. Can Eileen Shaw, and this is from Peter Healy. Could you please play requests for Kate Healy, Ballinaboy, and some nice song, if you can, from Johnny McAvoy or some other singer. And this is from your son, Peter. We're delighted to do that, Peter, and we'll play another song in a little while for your mother. Gan hours a be. Ceann Eileen Joe, thank you so much for the great programmes. Well done to John Hoban on his marvellous remembrances of Gerry Carthy. I am forever grateful to John Hoban, who taught me to play the mandolin as a mature student. And I'm also grateful to himself and his lovely wife Isabella for their wonderful friendship. Goramil Mahigat from Joe and Jen in Comer. Fáilte roimhin sin gur míle maith. Another lovely one from a Castlebar listener, Garogin ní Granel. And Garogin says, "Hi Joe, ag banch tanamh as an glár all in almost to Gerry Carthy. Buchas a sin, buchas J a anam úsal ceolwer." What a lovely message there as Gaelge from Garogin. And Garogin got a míle maigat, and to continue on the wonderful work you've always been doing, promoting the Gaelge and the Ceol and the Dausa agus chuile chórt mo sin. Another lovely one here. It says, "We knew Gerry Carthy from our days in UCG when we played in O'Reilly's in Foster Street in the 70s. We were called the Rakish Paddies, Marcin and Joe Clancy and Jerry Handley and Declan Conneely. On occasion, when Gerry or Declan weren't available, Gerry Carthy subbed in, and he was certainly a real gentleman. He played the banjo. We didn't know that he had all the other skills as well. We met him from time to time on the prom in Salt Hill in more recent years, when he turned his hand to the saxophone. Got a míle maigat. That comes from Joe Clancy. Joe, thank you very much for the stories about O'Reilly's in Foster Street in the 70s, and indeed he used to frequent Mrs. Collins as well. Go hall in their father. And we've several more as well. I'll try and get through them, try and get through most of them. We'll hear a little more music then from Gerry Carthy, and maybe a little piece from John Hoban as well. But to Sinead Gale, a lovely message here beforehand. It says, "Joe, I wonder could you mention on your radio, I found a set of house keys in Ballina a few days ago between the Cathedral and Mam's Cafe. And I'm sending you my mobile, and if somebody contacts Midwest Radio, we'll forward that message. The number here is 087 900 4141, 087 900 4141, and you can WhatsApp us or text us, and you can become united with your house keys. Hi Joe, tuned in for your tribute to Gerry Carthy with John Hoban. Here is what Doug Patrick from Santa Fe, a very good friend of Gerry Carthy, said about him. Calling on him through the years and coming out here to play music with him, it was all about Mikey, his son, for him, helping others and the music. I will miss Gerry forever. No truer words. Thank you, Joe." This comes from Cormac Gannon. Cormac, another wonderful multi-instrumentalist, and from South Mayo, from Bowlia near Shrule and then Corb, and doing all great work for the music in the South Californian coast, and of course a great friend of Gerry Carthy and the Fairfax Festival. Agus Huilahort. Thanks for that beautiful quote there, that lovely quote from Doug Patrick about Gerry Carthy. Brilliant music, Joe, amazing talent, and an absolute joy to listen to the show from the first hour with all the beautiful new CDs of Mayo musicians. Isn't it brilliant? And now the tribute to Gerry Carthy from Joe Lavelle in the Merry Monk in Ballina. Joe, of course, a great promoter of the Ceol there, and has great traditional music all the time down there in the Merry Monk. Got a míle maigat, and Joe was one of our generous sponsors here for this programme for many years. Hi Joe, would you mention an upcoming concert taking place in the Linen Hall Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday, May the 21st, with Stephen Doherty, the outstanding multi-instrumentalist and arranger and composer from Foxford, and Lana Thornburg, the prize-winning harper and composer as well. It should be a really, really great night. That's the upcoming concert taking place in the Linen Hall Theatre in Castlebar, Thursday on May the 21st, Two brilliant, very innovative but glorious traditional musicians from Mayo. Gerry was a real gentleman and a great musician. Rest in peace, Gerry, and this is from Austin Quinn in Castlebar. Got a mille maigat. Lovely message here. Great that I knew him is the end of the message, and this comes from Vincey Keehan. Vincey is over in America, and brilliant that John and yourself are playing a tribute to Gerry Carthy, a great musician, character and friend for many years. He made a huge impact on us all, listening in San Francisco. And that's Vincey Keehan. Got a mille maigat, Vincey, for texting us all the way across the United States from the Pacific Ocean. God bless John Hoban for such a wonderful account of Gerry Carthy's life and music. And his people over the years of music, and his caring in particular for his son Mikey throughout his entire life, especially in his early years. Gerry was one of my favourite people. And may he rest in peace. Mikey was an example to us all, and may they both rest in peace together again. This is from Gerry Handley, the great box player in Galway, who played in Riley's pub indeed with Gerry Carthy from time to time. Another lovely one is Gaelgus is Iwai Joseph. Tá se go hálinn ar fad bheith géisteacht leis an geol agus leis an córá ó Gerry Carthy agus ó John Hoban. Go yeisté go rá anam álinn ag Gerry Carthy agus anam ceolmhar tagann seo ó bhríd ó Grady. Another beautiful one is Gaelgus is Joe gur a mille maigat an chlár álinn seo. Súlamsa ghuiil siad go léir ag búla ceol in ard insna flash go hard for light. And some other lovely messages on my own phone. Joe, congratulations on a very special programme on Gerry Carthy and on John Hoban. Very special indeed. And this comes from the renowned poet Terry McDonough from Colchimach. And of course Terry, his mother, a first cousin of Joe Shannon, the great uilleann piper and multi-instrumentalist, who was such a huge influence on the American music like Gerry Carthy, but he was based in Chicago. And they are superb artists, says Terry McDonough. Terry got a mille maigat, and Gerry Handley says that once again sends me on a message on my own to say that it was a wonderful account of Gerry Carthy's life, and what a marvellous person he was. One of my favourite people, says Gerry Handley Irisht. And Patrick Fox says he's really enjoying the programme and loving the songs of Gerry Carthy. And we might play his own slow air, The Waters of the Moy, a lovely composition in memory of Gerry. Well, we'll try and do that, Patrick. Certainly I have it with me here. Got a mille maigat. Another one, this will take as our last one for the moment. A lovely message here from the great, this is from the great sculptor, marvellous man, the great sculptor himself. And he is Cathal McCarthy. And Cathal, of course, lives in Castlebar, from Ballintubber originally, and really enjoying the music of Gerry Carthy. And he says, Joe, got a mille maigat for alerting me to the programme about Gerry Carthy, hoping that it will be available on Listen Back. It will indeed be available on Listen Back for a week, Cathal. And hoping that my son Tom, who's in San Francisco and working over there, this is Cathal McCarthy's message, will be able to hear it. Gerry Carthy was indeed a real character and a wonderful troubadour and a great favourite of my son Tom. Goduga Gianna Flagstow. Thank you so much, Cathal McCarthy there. Cathal, of course, marvellous sculpture, and he that created that stunning melodeon, absolutely stunning melodeon metal sculpture at the entrance to Mayo near Ballandine on the road from Galway on the N17. Shinny and Scale. Go hall in our fads. Well, now we'll hear a lovely piece of music, and we'll go back to Gerry Carthy himself. Gomanishkal to, yes, Gerry Carthy himself. And I suppose what could be more appropriate than Tom Shem Chola agus No Rushime is the lovely title of this beautiful piece of music. I'm asleep now and don't waken me. One of the stunning slow airs and laments, played, as far as I remember, on the guitar by Gerry Carthy.
2 years in Galway.
And a few more beautiful messages in about Gerry Carthy. Gerry Carthy was an absolute gentleman, and he was loved by so many different people. And not just alone for his wonderful music and his personality, but because of the marvellous love that he showed for his own son Mikey. And a beautiful one here from Joe Greeny. Joe says, I used to listen to Gerry Carthy and my buddy Gerry King, aka the Ord Ree, from Boffin in Collins Bar in 1981, where I found trad and never looked back. The Woody I Gashlon Halia, Joe Greeny. Got to meet my good show, and we couldn't finish in a sad note with Gerry Carthy. Here he is playing the beautiful tune called Sport, composed by Padre O'Riordan.
An stáisiún is fearr sa bhean iarthar, Midwest Radio.